And there we go. Now we're live on YouTube. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I am the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today are three incredible people. I'm going to start with the lady just off to my right. That is Cheryl Todd. She's half of, and the better sounding half, really, of Gun Freedom Radio. And just below me on the screen, Rob Morris. Rob is with Slowfax Blog, Self-Defense Gun Stories. He joins me on Polite Society Podcast. He's all over the place. Amaland, you can find him everywhere. And our interview subject for today is somebody who I got a chance to work with in person about a month ago. Boyd Kneeland. Boyd runs Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Boyd, thanks for joining us today, man.
Happy to be here. Great to be here.
So, if we could, I'm going to start with you, Boyd, and we're going to get started with Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Been around quite a while. I knew about it shortly after I became an advocate for Second Amendment rights. Could you tell us kind of how JPFO got started?
Absolutely. So, and actually, I was just talking on the phone with a member who was saying that the whole idea of genocide as a function of gun control kind of got started with JPFO. He was telling me this, which was kind of fun, and he was at a rally the other day that some of us may have heard of, and folks were talking about how it's just a function of gun control and how JPFO had started that discussion back in the mid-90s. So really has been around for a long time, had a real impact. Not a huge organization yet, but we're working on that. And we've got some great message to get out to people that meshes with the whole idea of minorities have this right to defend themselves. We as humans have a right to defend ourselves, and it's tied up in the United States in our Second Amendment right, and we're not going to give it up.
Very cool. Yours is one of the few organizations that I know of that ties Second Amendment rights along with religious belief. Almost every other organization I know of is just Second Amendment rights, and there's no tie-ins anywhere else than that. And
right.
I'm wondering if you could, the public perception of Jewish people is that they are heavily anti-gun, and from what I've been seeing in the Second Amendment community, that's absolutely not the case. There are a large number of Jewish people that are very vociferously for their Second Amendment rights.
Absolutely. Nobody understands that right to self-defense like a minority group. And the centuries history of the Jewish people have brought it home harder than a lot of other minority groups have faced. So it's just a message that fits together. And it's sad that not everybody gets that, but we're working on them. And certainly a lot of Jewish people do. Yep.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. For those, there's a small, tiny segment of the population that really doesn't even bear mentioning, so I probably shouldn't have. But there are some people that are Holocaust deniers. But the Jewish people, even during World War II, they had an uprising in Poland, and they defended themselves with firearms. Those that didn't fare so well.
Yep. JPFO has a number of video productions that touch on that. No Guns for Jews talks about the history of World War II. And man, if you haven't seen the movie The Bielski Brothers, you owe it to yourself. Great story, great history. Not the kind that you were fed in high school, but really interesting. And the story of a couple of brothers who escaped the ghetto and ran resistance against the Nazis. And no Holocaust deniers in my family.
No kidding. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to Rob and Cheryl at this point. I'm going to try to get social media connected and get some comments up here on the air.
One of your members, Boyd, described the problem with activating Jews as this way. He said, "We are a bunch of rule followers." Right?
Right.
Every Sunday we study the rules, and we think that rules then will solve all of our problems right up until they don't.
They don't.
And that's sometimes a very difficult emotional transition. We're all human. Jews have it in this particular aspect, and the rest of it, I mean, we're seeing people day to day that are struggling with that, of course, right now.
Right. In the widest, in our entire community in the U.S., it's been really hard.
Right.
We want to be law-abiding. We want to do the right thing. The law tells us the right thing is one thing, and sometimes we know that that's not always the truth. So you do have to be willing to gain knowledge and teach yourself and learn and make judgments. And if authorities are not telling you the right thing, you have to be willing to act on that. We've got a for JPFO, never again is a verb. It's not just a happy phrase. We're doing something about it, and not empty words for us. So it is hard for some people, but we've got thousands of members who say we're clued into what never again means.
We got comments just coming in left and right. One of them that I want to get is Gun Owners Radio asks, and I just lost it. What was the name of that film again, Boyd? What was the name of the film that you?
The Brothers.
It's called Bielski Brothers. It's Bielski. Looking off to the right because that's where my Google search is.
Okay.
But really a rockin' movie. Good story, and drives home the point of how we're all in charge of ourselves and that commitment to make that kind of atrocity never happen again.
All right. And for people... Go ahead, Cheryl.
I just was going to say, on the topic of videos, on the topic of movies, and I have seen the Bielski Brothers. It's really incredible. The JPFO has some videos that you guys were directly involved with producing and putting out, and the one titled Innocence Betrayed, and it's the individuals, innocents, the actual people who were betrayed, I think really ties in with exactly what you're talking about with, when we follow laws that maybe are not moral laws, then those innocents, the people that are trying to be the rules followers and trying to do the right thing, they are sometimes betrayed and to horrible genocidal results. And I think that is, what is it, about a 90-minute movie, something like that? But it is, I don't know how you can come away from that and not be impacted and changed in some way, even if you already understand the value of being an armed and prepared and trained citizen. If you already understand that, I don't think you can watch this film and still not be changed and impacted in such a way that you will understand never again in a different way, and you will understand the clause in our own Second Amendment shall not be infringed in a different way.
That's right. That's right. It brings it home. It makes an emotional connection to what we all know is right in our minds that we feel inside. So, great movie. Exactly 90 minutes. You're right on. So, yeah, that I should have mentioned that before, Bielski Brothers. But I just recently watched the other one. So, all good stuff. All clarifies where we're at and why it's so important that we drive home the message that gun control is dangerous, that it kills people.
Boyd, I hate to argue with you in that. I was just watching No Guns for Negroes. By the way, let me clarify what that title means. It is not intended to disarm blacks. It is commenting on the injustice when blacks are disarmed. Okay, now that we've got that straight, no more emails. So, and what I liked about it was the sense in which it made viscerally clear that
Yes.
people in power will always try and disarm a minority. That makes abuse so much easier. And I'm going, oh boy, I hope we have a sense of empathy, because here it comes again.
That's right, man. And thank you for clarifying. No Guns for Jews, No Guns for Negroes. Fantastic content that Aaron made when he started the organization that we still have just tremendous demand for because of the reasons you said. And the title's a little bit on the surface strike people the wrong way. But yeah, yeah.
I want to mention to everybody who's commenting, I'm only able to get a few comments on. The majority of the comments coming in are for topics that have happened throughout the week. We will be talking about that, but right now we're going to be we're just going to be basically talking with Lloyd about JPFO until 15 after the hour. And Andrew Green on Facebook says, "Looking good, Boyd." So apparently the gray hair didn't make it from my computer to his.
Check's in the mail, Andrew.
So I have.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I'm sorry, I keep stepping on you, Paul. I apologize, but for many years I had heard of the JPFO. I am a Christian woman, so I thought I wouldn't be able to join. I thought I wouldn't be able to support your efforts through membership and through that sort of. I figured I could probably donate in some way. Can you speak to that just for a moment to kind of clarify for folks?
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. A lot of our members are not Jewish. Some of our leadership is not Jewish. You do not have to be Jewish. You have to want to fight gun control and understand how your right to keep and bear arms drives an ethical message and an important feature in our society. Nothing to do, you don't have to be Jewish. And thanks for mentioning it, Cheryl. I should have mentioned that too.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing, Boyd, because we've talked about an emotional message, and it's so hard for new gun owners, many of whom live in the city, many of whom are minorities, racial, religious.
Yep, that's right.
They've been sold a perspective of gun owners that we're a bunch of racist rednecks, and it turns out we are a bunch of rule followers. So for an Orthodox Jew to find out that there's another culture of rule followers that wants him to defend himself is kind of a wake-up call, isn't it?
I hope so. Let me tell you, I hope so. And demonstrably it is. A lot of people are waking up. It's an important message. We have to understand what's right and wrong and make it part of our daily lives. And that's really important. Yeah, I think a lot of people are waking up to that. So I think I'm about to lose my time here.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, we've talked about the emotional connection to what we know in our heads, and this is a neat melding of both. Zellman, the founder of JPFO, Aaron Zellman, wrote this book, and it's a comparison of Weimar Republic and German gun control law to some of the early U.S. gun control law. And whether you believe it's all true or you just see the parallels, it's a thing that kind of sticks in your mind after you've read it. So Gun Control, Gateway Attorney, great book. We've got some great fiction written by people that folks will recognize. L. Neil Smith wrote The Mitzvah with Aaron Zellman. It's a really neat fiction, neat little novel. Dial 911 and Die is a story by Richard Stevens, who's still in our core leadership group at JPFO after decades. We've got a lot of people who really stuck with us to get this message out and get people involved. Members get a quarterly newsletter that has a lot of important information. And in a lot of ways, that's how JPFO impacts the culture and impacts hopefully our political scene, is we get our members motivated through our quarterly newsletter, and that's done by Alan Corwin and a lot of really great writers who do topical things that are right in the news, information people need to get basically right away. So I have loved working with the organization. It's only been a few years for me, but it's been an eye-opening ride and a lot of fun. And I hope people will check it out. Our website's jpfo.org. I know Paul was going to say that. I'll upstage you.
Yes,
and store.jpfo. So check out Genocide Chart is there. Alerts that we put out are there. A lot of great stuff.
All right, one more social media commentary that came through, and then I'll let you go, Boyd. But Kevin Sona, and let me go ahead and re-rack this. Kevin Sona says JPFO understands the history and the dangers of forgetting history. Those who refuse to learn history are doomed to repeat it. I think that kind of wraps up a lot of what JPFO is about.
Never again.
Amen.
Never again.
All right. Well, we will let you go because I know you're working, and for those who are maybe not be aware, Boyd's actually in the offices for JPFO and the offices for the SAF are in the same building, and so there's things happening there. But we're going to go ahead and let you take off, Boyd, and thank you for joining us today, man.
Thanks so much for having me on, Paul. And Cheryl, Rob, it was great to see you guys and be part of it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Boyd. Keep up the good work.
All right. Well, then we get to the next portion of the show, and normally at this point I say, well, let's just talk about what's happened in the past week, and it's been 3 weeks because of the Christmas and the holiday, the Christmas and New Year's falling on Fridays. We just decided rather than moving the show around, we would just go on a 2-week break. And holy cow, we've had a few things happen.
Has anybody else thought that the curse, may you live in interesting times, is just a little too apropos for comfort? Wow. Yeah. Who would have thought that our country would face an internal coup led by the media, funded by domestic billionaires, supported by international agencies, abetted by our own intelligence and law enforcement? Can I say that without it sounding like a bizarre novel?
It used to be you couldn't, but I think now you can, yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wondered if everybody else was having that same reaction. Yeah, you too. I spoke to a psychiatrist this morning, not about my mental health, I asked him because he's essentially polling his patients, and I said, this has been a crazy week on top of a crazy month on a crazy year, and he goes, yeah, most people are burnt out. I'm not seeing a bunch of people saying that this is causing them such distress. That those prone to it are already seeking a friend to talk to, and no, we're burnt out. Cheryl, is that does that jive with the people you know?
It does, and here's the danger of it, is that, we all need to take healthy breaks from the media, whatever that means for you, the media, right? The news, always in air quotes. We need to take those healthy breaks, but sometimes when we get to these flash points like we have now, and we kind of maybe all are trying to take a break at the same time, that makes it harder for us to be tapped in, to help, kind of help digest and explain some of the messaging that we see going on out there for our individual audiences and viewers and listeners. And I think that it gives the other side an even greater opportunity to just run with however they want to define things and label things and label people and label behavior and motivations. And then on top of that, just as we were beginning our conversation off air, I think, Rob, you were either speculating, but I think you were reading that there's a very prominent national voice out there that said that, the President of the United States should be completely silenced on social media or in polite society. Like his voice is not allowed to be heard in polite society. And if you have to silence your opponent, your opposing voices, do you really have a point at all? If you can't debate in the public square intelligently, and if your opponent is saying, bizarre and crazy things, that serves you, really, to let that person just continue to babble on. But if you truly have a point, you should welcome the voice of the person that you oppose. Thoughts?
That's not... Okay, the phrase you were looking for was the clerisy. The people who determine what is acceptable speech and what is not, and who are acceptable spokesmen for that speech. Donald Trump is none of those. And that's why we hired him. Because the official talking heads in the conservative movement became never Trumpers and were willing to go along, get part of the kickbacks. And we said, no, that's gone on too long. It needs to stop. What is fascinating, Cheryl, and you just underlined it brilliantly, and I will, let me cite this. This is from Breitbart. Michelle Obama calls on big tech to not only silence, but ban Donald Trump permanently. Wow. They don't want to hear what he has to say. They're afraid that you will hear what he has to say. And we've seen similar actions. Google, Twitter, Facebook. And not only did we see them silence us in the public square, but then they've given massive amounts of money and in-kind promotion to people who oppose conservatives. Cheryl, you're a rule follower. I will make a reach right now. And a fairly well-worn constitution. Yes, okay. So you love the idea of this country, are passionate about what the United States means, and that is what you and I saw die this week. The idea of the United States, where we're a society of rules, of laws, not men, and where, I mean, in our founding documents, they talk about the right of free speech and free association, and now we're told, oh no, unless you're an Antifa or BLM rally, you can't meet. So we have the political litmus test of whether we're allowed to associate, and then we have the political litmus test of whether we're allowed to speak. Is our speech allowed speech or not? And this coming from that used to promote free speech.
Yes, it's amazing how far the mark has moved in such a short amount of time. I've been saying for the last several years that just even the stance of a public figure who is running for office, a politician, to take the stance against the Second Amendment in any fashion, that used to be political suicide. That was the end of that person's ability to really be heard in and be supported by donations for their campaign. They called it the third rail, right? It's like that third rail on a subway where the electricity is. You don't grab that third rail, right? So how did that go from being, you don't touch that? That's part of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the firewall that says to the government, you can't come on this side, right? That's why it's the third rail. That's why you don't grab it, because you don't get to come on this side of the Bill of Rights into the individual citizens' lives. So how did we go from that to Beto O'Rourke and Biden and Harris? How did we go that quickly to where they are running on the idea of reaching into your home as an individual citizen and removing something that you legally possess, that you legally purchased with your own hard-earned money, just because they can label it as a gun and they can try to get the head bob going that, oh, guns are dangerous and those who own guns are really fringe and off the mark. They have caused people to buy in such a short amount of time that is a reasonable stance to ignore the Bill of Rights, to ignore the firewall, and to reach into our homes and get your neighbor's support to remove something that you legally own. It's mind-boggling to me. And then when they own all of the ability to speak and they're silencing anybody who would have a powerful and public voice, where do we go from here?
I want to bring in, we've got a huge, there's a firestorm going on in social media. I want to bring in a few comments, and some of them, I'm going to pick on one particular viewer, and that is Lisa Rose. And she says, relax, nobody's coming to take your guns, Biden's not a king, yada, yada. I want to personally go off on this for a second. Is somebody going to come knocking on your door, Lisa, tomorrow and take your firearms? No, it's not going to happen tomorrow because Biden isn't in office yet. Is it going to happen on February 1st? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so then either. Could it happen by July 31st? Oh, there's a definite possibility. You see, Biden has the presidency, and he's the most pro-gun of the two in the executive branch, the other being Kamala Harris. And Biden doesn't like your guns to start with. Kamala Harris hates them. There is now AOC and others in the Democratic Party in charge of the House that would love to make it illegal for you to own or possess any weapons of any type. And now we come down to the one firewall. The one firewall we had was the Senate. And that's now down to 50-50. And when there's a 50-50 tie, guess who gets a tie-breaking vote? Yes, that's right, Kamala Harris. Where does that lead us? Where are we right now? Where that leads us is the Supreme Court. And where that's a danger is there's 50-50 split in the Senate. They could change the law tomorrow. They could change the law. They could write a bill tomorrow, get it passed, wait for Biden to get in office, and on January 20th, he could sign a law expanding the Supreme Court from 9 to 59.
Yes. So, and to the Lisa Roses out there, I mean, God bless you in your naivete. I wish that I could just live with those rose-colored glasses. However, I don't. I've watched movies like the 90 minutes that we talked about that the JPFO has produced called Innocence Betrayed. I've read history. I understand how governments overreach. And if I were to just buy into what the Lisa Roses are saying, calm down, it's fine, don't worry about it. Well, at what point do we worry? Where is that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I've lived in California. I've had my family threatened and been told that that wasn't a justification, a justifiable need to own a firearm. We know people who live in New York city where that's still the case. We have seen door-to-door confiscation, both in New York and California. Oh, you had an adverse reaction to a drug. They gave you some sleeping medications because you were intubated and unconscious. We had a counselor speak to you because you come out of that. You don't know where you are. Oh, now you've had mental health counseling, therefore we can grab your firearms. This is what happened to a retired firefighter, a certified good guy. Oh, in New York. Yeah. So you can close your eyes if you want. Lisa, I wish it were true that we were a nation of laws. Right now, it depends on who you are as to whether or not you get to violate the laws. I mean, do you think our elites follow the law? Do the Clintons follow the law? I'd love to hear you make that argument. Cheryl? Paul?
Cheryl,
I just kind of, go back to, everybody has that line, I think. Maybe the Lisa Roses of the world do not, where they say, well, I can put up with this, and then I can put up with this, and I can put up with this. But then there has to be a point when you say, no, things are beyond what is reasonable to put up with. And when we have, by whatever methods, find ourselves with a Harris-Biden, wink, right? Or is it Biden-Harris administration about to be sworn in a few short days? So that part's already happened, right? So then they already have two huge bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, already written up, already ready to go, that list guns by make and model, not just the big scary AR-15s, but actual handguns of every make and model, that they are waiting to pass these bills. So do we wait for those bills to pass and then we get upset? I mean, at what point, and what does upset mean? What are we to do other than to call and write our senators and call and write our Congress people? But the two bills, please look them up, Miss Lisa Rose and the Lisa Roses out there. One is HR 5717 and one is S3254. Now, all they have to do is dust these off, right? Go ahead and get them reinstituted with all the new co-signers, and it's off to the races. It becomes law. Now it's federal law. We still have our states. We still have our state laws. But how does the federal and the state interact with each other in individual situations where, already in New Jersey, they have hardly any shred of their Second Amendment left. You mentioned, Rob, California. They have hardly any shred of their Second Amendment left. So which follows which? State follows federal, federal follows state. I think it's really about the narrative. I think it's really about the language that's used to try to paint those of us who are gun owners and constitutionalists and Second Amendment supporters. It's the cultural implications of where we stand in society. And if our voices are being silenced, again, back to that, and chipped away, where does that leave us? How do we continue to educate the next generation if we are being silenced and having laws being put against us at the levels that they are?
Cheryl, you talked about it, and the thing we're not talking about is what do we do next? We have laws to hopefully constrain people on their behavior. I would say we are now a lawless nation. When you can steal an election through fraud and judges can look the other way and say, I'm sorry, there's no law against that. Okay, we tried the ballot box. We went to a rally, millions of us, and we're called terrorists. I didn't see us loot any stores. I didn't see us burn anything down. I didn't see us dance on cop cars. Now, if some people did, by the way, we'll find out who. Oh, well, those are right. When Antifa does it, it's a mostly peaceful protest. Okay, now we've been denied the soapbox. I don't want to go to the cartridge box. But if you want to start a war of the cities versus the country, that is phenomenally dangerous. War is just physical conflict is described as politics by physical means. I understand that you may have a narrative, but do you understand how frighteningly vulnerable civilization is? And the more urban it gets, the more sensitive it is to upset. By the way, the guys who live out in the country aren't diving to the store for every snowflake. That's what happens in New York, Chicago, Detroit. So that reminds you how tentative, how fragile those societies are. Please don't get in a shoving match with people who, I know what it's like to be without power, to be without fuel, to be without water for several months. Been there, done that. Do you want to think that New York City can go through that? I'm praying it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to find it, and we are getting comments so fast that I can't sort through them all. But one of the comments that came through a little while ago is, well, can't we just agree on something like universal background checks where 90% of the people want them? That is a fallacy that 90% of the people support background checks. They never have. I've tried to find the study where that came from. 90% of the people do not support universal background checks. And let me tell you a little bit about what will happen if you get universal background checks. You cannot hand a handgun to your wife anymore. You can't take your child with you hunting and hand him a rifle anymore, or a shotgun anymore. If your neighbor, if there's Antifa down the block and they are starting to cause issues, you can't loan your neighbor a shotgun to defend their homes. You've known the guy for 20 years. You know he's a good guy. You know he's going to cause no problems. He's only going to use that weapon to defend himself. You can't do it now. You can't even have your wife handle your AR-15, although it's perfect for her. You can't do that anymore because they have to go through a background check first. Oh, hold on just a second, Mr. Antifa and Miss Antifa. I need to go down to the gun store. We need to do a background check, and then I'll be right back after that, and then you can do what you like. That ain't gonna work.
Mm-hmm. It's a permissive system. It's a system of asking for permission. And once we are adults, we don't ask permission anymore. Now, there are people out there that I guess disagree with that, and they want to, treat the government as though it's their mommy or their daddy, and somehow, some government entity will know more about you or your neighbor than you do yourself. But that is not what our founders fought for. I mean, they fought, they bled, they starved, and they died for the opportunity to even put quill to parchment to write this document. And they already knew the arguments that were going to come down the pike. And they realized that people were going to, start casting their eyes back to government for every little thing in their life. And that is why the only place in the entire Constitution and Bill of Rights that the words shall not be infringed is having to do with our right to keep and bear arms. Look through your history, understand the battles that took place in order for us to even have this inheritance. And you will very quickly disagree with the Lisa Roses of the world that, oh, it's really not that bad. Oh, it's really, it's okay if they want us to ask for permission to defend our own lives. And Truly, the answers lie in our history and the fact that we are a bridge from those that actually put everything on the line, and the future generations who someday are going to look back on us and say, what did you do? What did you do that you let so much of our individual freedoms and liberties just slip away in the name of common sense gun laws, right? And going along to get along.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to put some hope in everybody's heart, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
There is hope, and I don't mean to be blowing smoke where it doesn't belong, but the hope lies with my boss. The hope lies with people taking. Right now, we've got supposedly a 6-3. Honestly, it's more of a 5-4. I don't trust Roberts anymore. But we've got right now, at this moment, a majority in the Supreme Court. A lot of current bad law is going to get reversed. And how do we keep it that way? We've got a 50-50 separation right now in the Senate. So any bad gun bills need to make it through the Senate. Theoretically, it's possible. How do we stop that? We get everybody that lives in a state with a Democratic senator to get a hold of that senator and say, you've got one shot to do this right. You touch our Second Amendment rights, and I will make sure that you never make it to the next election, in that I'll get you primaried. I will make donations to your opponent to make sure you never see another election for Senate. And if you should happen to get through the primary, I'll make double the donations to whoever's opposing you in the general election. If they get 5, 10, 15 million of those messages, all of a sudden they're going to sit up and realize the one thing that politicians love, and that's to become reelected, is at serious jeopardy if they keep stepping the way they're stepping. There are bad things that are going to happen out of the Senate, but I honestly believe if all of us make a concerted effort, we can stop anything horrific from coming out of the Senate. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's my turn, isn't it? Paul, you were right. I don't know that you are right. There were senators who said, I dare not touch this. To go back to Cheryl's earlier point, there was a time when 25% of Democrat representatives were given an A rating by the NRA. That number is now 0. My concern is that a number of candidates ran to get the most votes. A number of candidates were informed that they don't have to worry about that. We'll take care of the election rather than worrying about votes. So when legislators now get to ignore the voters, that's called a tyranny. It's not a democracy anymore. Where does our hope lie then? With the Supreme Court? I doubt it. They've already ducked. Will it lie with people who say, well, you guys are just have stolen our rights. It's no longer a representative democracy. We'll sit over here. We're willing to leave the union while you guys work out. We want to be heard. Let us know when we can be heard again.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I can really add to that. It's, I do think we have to have hope. I do think that we have to continue to press into the areas that traditionally have been the answer. But I think we also need to be understanding that the rules have changed. This last election, it's mind-boggling to me how many people have written on their social media, there was no impropriety with the election, like none, like zero. That's not even reasonable and logical. And so to get enough people to understand that the ballot box maybe has been so severely compromised that we've lost that voice, maybe, that we've lost the ability to pressure our elected officials by, saying we're going to try to get an opponent elected. Well, how do you get an opponent elected if we're no longer trusting that our vote is, that there's integrity in our voting system? So it is a hard thing, but I do agree with Paul that your boss, as far as the Second Amendment Foundation, Alan Gottlieb, and the board for the Second Amendment Foundation, they pick the right fights. I think they fight the way that needs to be fought these days. It's encouraging that we have the ability to take things to the courts and to judges, but it's also disconcerting that everything needs to be funneled through the courts and through judges rather than relying on our founding documents and our founding principles. Right. But thank God we do have organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation that are constantly have their ear to what is happening, and even bills and things that are happening out there that aren't on the surface necessarily a Second Amendment fight. They can see, there's this other thing that's been wrapped up into a Second Amendment fight, and they are doing what they can. And so for us to give them our support and our membership is a huge step in the right direction until we figure out what this new set of rules looks like. How do we interact with the next election? Will we have shown enough light on the areas that are either people being lazy about their work or being dishonest about their work, that we will have corrected things by that time? I'm praying that that's the situation.
Cheryl, you talked about us being rule followers. I want to talk to Lisa again. Lisa, we're in a situation right now where lots of people saw violence on TV and said, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've never had a problem with the law. I would like to go get a gun. And the law says, okay, maybe you need a permit to get a gun. They say, I'd like to carry a gun. Maybe you need to get a permit to do that. And now we have municipalities who'll go, yeah, we're not comfortable with you coming and getting us the fingerprints that we require, so we'll schedule an appointment. It can happen in over a year from now. So you think that there should be a mandatory background check, and what if the answer never comes back? We've seen governments say you need our permission, and yet we refuse to grant it. By the way, we don't say that you're disqualified. We just say we're too busy to answer the question about whether you may exercise your rights. Would we do that to a civil right? Would we do that to minority rights? To blacks? To Hispanics? To people with minority religious proclivities? But yet you're willing to do it to the millions, hundreds of millions of people who say, I know that the police can't be there to protect me. It's my job to keep my family safe until the police arrive. We have media who would call you a vigilante for simply saying that you want to stay safe until you can get the police to solve the problem. So there are two issues there. Our government's not trustworthy. Our government has said it will do one thing and then done another. And the media is lying to you. Let me amplify a point. The people who carry a firearm with a license in public are the most law-abiding, most non-violent, meaning if there's violence, they want to back away from it. Mm-hmm. A policeman has to move toward conflict. People, like all the people I'm looking at on this panel, who carry concealed, we know that we want to back out of a problem because if it escalates, we'll have brought a gun to it because it's going to be ours. So all we're trying to do is get away to safety. What is it? Married Japanese men are the most law-abiding population that we can find on the planet, and licensed concealed carriers have statistically the same proclivity to get into conflict. And you, by the way, which criminals are going to back up and take a background check? So you've disarmed the most law-abiding group of people, most nonviolent on the planet, in order that you think a criminal will go through that same process. That's not the way it works. That's not how criminals behave.
Well, and let me just kind of draw a line, if I may, very, very delicately and carefully, because all the stuff that happened at the Capitol is still very fresh, and people are feeling a lot of things about what took place. But you have somebody that does not respect their rights or anyone else's rights, and they use a firearm incorrectly and immorally, and they wrongly take life, right? So what does the media do? What do so many people do? They immediately start wrapping together the actions of one person who did the wrong thing, and all of the other, as Rob so very eloquently just stated, law-abiding, rules-following people, the 99.99999% of firearms owners in America. We've watched the same thing happen. There were so many people that went to Washington, D.C. with the idea in mind that they wanted to, with discipline, with calm, with peacefulness, meet together and oversee election integrity. That's what they went there to do. That's all they did the whole time they were there. A few people, either by design or being caught up in something, did what we feel is the wrong thing, and there was destruction of public property and altercations with the Capitol Police, and now even our own are shaming the whole because of the actions of a few. And this is what has caused me to be so frustrated. It's actually, I will go to the degree to say that it is disgusting to me to listen to and read the posts of people who want to say, basically, if you were present in D.C., you are somehow culpable with the things that we want to say were done incorrectly, wrong, and it disenfranchises and discourages people who were there for the right reason, who would want to go and do a similar assembly or rally or support for what they truly believe, and it's very disheartening. And then, again, back to how much of an opportunity we even have in the public square to have our voices heard. What do we do with that? I think that we all have to kind of take a step and take a breath and go back and say, look, we're not going to buy in and then pile on to the already agreed upon notion that if you are a Trump supporter, or if you are a gun owner, or if you are for election integrity, that you are somehow to be set off to the side, and you are somehow a fringe element and somebody that the rest of your normal friends can't even associate with. I think we need to take a moment and readjust what we really are about in this nation, and stop shaming the very people that would have actually been among our founders.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring in some social media commentary here. And again, these are happening so fast that I'm not going to be able to get. We've had literally hundreds of comments, but Raymond Williams says, as long as the media is compromised, we will never be able to make any headway. And I want to address that just a little bit. And that, Raymond, see, that's where people like Cheryl and Rob and myself and you come in. We need to do an end around the media. I realized that, 8 years ago when I started 9 years ago when I started Polite Society podcast. Rob realized that 10 years ago when he started the Slow Facts blog. And Cheryl, when she started Gun Freedom Radio, realized that there has to be a way to go around the mainstream media, and social media is it. I've seen a lot of people commenting on Facebook, well, this is going to be going away because they're going to be shutting us all down, and YouTube is going to be shutting us down, and all this. Yeah, that may happen, but as long as we are allowed a voice on those platforms, right now YouTube and Facebook are where it's at. That's where the majority of the people are. And so we're going to keep broadcasting there. We are looking into going to places like Parler and MeWe and other places. I personally am on those platforms, but as far as SAF, that we're not there yet. But you come in, everybody watching, Raymond and others, you come in by sharing what you, not just this show, not just Rob and Cheryl's show, but by sharing other media that doesn't just blast out what the regular media is saying.
Paul, let me amplify that. You're absolutely right. Times have changed. There was a time when if your story didn't make it in the afternoon paper, your story wasn't heard. You drove in your car today, you had your phone with you, you could listen to your news on podcasts. It's no longer broadcast, it's narrowcast. You can find out the sort of information you want. So what Paul and I and Cheryl are now doing was impossible 10, 12 years ago. I dare say podcasters have a bigger audience than CNN. Thank God, because there's only so much of that I can stand. It's one of the ugly parts of moving through an airport is having to put up with CNN. But that puts the burden back on the commenter. This is what I heard. This is what I thought. This is what I'd like my friends to consider. Because if you think that Cheryl and I and Paul have a voice in the public square, we're nothing compared to the voice that you have with your friends. We're a stranger. You're a buddy they see every week. Who's trusted? You're trusted. So take the stories that move you, that you give credibility to, that you've investigated and vetted, and share them with your friends.
And we continue. I'm serious. We're getting comments popping through my screen every 15 seconds. 10 to 15 seconds. I can only get a few of them up. But it seems like most social media is agreeing with us. And I'm trying to find it again. I already popped it on the screen, but I can't find it at this point. But the point was made that YouTube and Facebook do provide a lot of opportunities for us to do this, and yet very few people are actually taking the opportunity to add their voice.
Are you thinking with videos, Paul, or that people have already dropped off of Facebook because they were afraid of being censored or banned?
I don't know what the commenter was referring to with that, but I will say this. There are, when I started podcasting, which is what I did before video, when I started podcasting, I was one of thousands. No, one of hundreds, I can easily say that, of pro-gun podcasters. And the only thing I did to claw and scratch my way to the top is hang around, because they all went away. When I started doing live video, the only thing I had to do to get noticed was keep doing it because people were sharing. I guess what I would try to, for encouragement for people who would want to do this, just start and don't give up. You're going to get there.
It is a lot of work.
Go, Cheryl.
I like
Go ahead.
Cheryl's program. She's been at it for years. She's getting better and better. She's on Ops Lens. And any moment now, after all those years of effort, she's going to be an overnight sensation.
No, that's exactly it. It's a lot of work. The preparation, the relationship building, the meeting with guests beforehand, gaining their trust that you're not going to make them look foolish or, pull some gotcha on them or something like that. And then there's all the post-production that goes into it. It's a lot of work. And where it's fun in the beginning, once it starts feeling like work, that's where the rubber hits the road. And
sweat and effort.
Exactly. And there are lots and lots of benefits to it. But, then you do have sometimes people really get a lot of naysayers come at them and try to, discourage them that they're, they didn't hold their gun the right way in that last picture they put up on social media,
Yes.
And a lot of people throw their hands up and go, you know what, it's not worth the aggravation. And so I think that, again, goes back to, let's police our own, but let's not hammer our own half to death when something goes slightly awry. Anyway, grace goes a long way.
Can I toot Cheryl's horn? So leave her. Go ahead,
Rob. We're past an hour, which is what we're scheduled for. So, but go ahead and go. We'll start wrapping up after that.
Cheryl spoke in private meetings before she started speaking at the gun shows that would come into town. She educated herself. She bootstrapped herself up to become a well-recognized, well-respected public speaker with particular expertise on the Second Amendment and the Constitution. You can too. She did it. Cheryl, as much as I love you, I think we're ordinary, and we can argue about that over drinks. So if we can do it, other people can, other people are, other people will. And I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg's going to be able to silence that.
That's exactly right. One of my favorite speeches that I have given in the past is called Ordinary Warriors. There's nothing particularly special about me. I don't have a degree in journalism or in broadcast. I am just a mom. I am just a grandma. And I wanted to stop being mischaracterized by other people. And I wanted to have my own voice, find my own voice, and by interviewing others who are subject matter experts like the two of you, that was part of finding that voice and educating myself. So yes, if I can do it, if Danny, the other guy, and I can do it on Gun Freedom Radio, anybody can do this.
Well, I will say this, Cheryl. It does take one thing that I think all three of us have shown that a lot of the public doesn't have. It takes work. It takes the ability to keep working when you think, why am I doing this? Because there's going to be times, even if for blogging, for podcasting, for video broadcast, there's going to be times when you look at stats, when you look at something doesn't go right, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, why am I doing this? Am I making a difference? Yeah. Keep going, because you will. All right, we are 4 minutes past where we were supposed to shut down. So what I'd like to do is I would like to have my co-commentators reintroduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and shut down the show. Cheryl, I'm going to start with you. If you'd tell everybody who you are and where they can find your stuff.
Absolutely, and thank you again so much for including me in today's weekly bullet. This was really an important discussion, and I'm excited to have been a part of it. I am Cheryl Todd. My husband and my husband's name is Danny Todd. We are the co-hosts of Gun Freedom Radio. And we have become podcast style, so you can find all of our shows where you can binge listen to your heart's content at gunfreedomradio.com. We are also small business owners. We have azfirearms.com, which is a small mom and pop's gun and ammo shop. And we also have an auction house called potofgoldestate.com, where we sell all kinds of estate items, guns, coins, jewelry, antiques, cars. And it's a lot of fun, and it keeps us very busy. We are a parent of one and grandparents of two.
All right. Rob, you're up next, man.
I host the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast, and I get to co-host the Polite Society podcast with Paul. He's the host. My blog is at slowfacts.wordpress.com. From there, my writing is carried at Crash Daily and on the Daily Surge. I write the Armed Citizen column at AmmoLand. And if I've been good, once a week, I get to join Bill Frady on Lock and Load Radio first thing Monday afternoon. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. I've learned so much.
Thank you for coming, man. I got to say, these two are among the two people that I trust the most when it comes to being able to work with them and being able to trust, and I always respect their opinions. And that's why I brought these two on this week. I knew as soon as things started popping the other day that this is going to be a really, really tough week to get through. I'd already set them up, but I was so grateful that I had these two to talk with this week, because I knew the topics were going to be a little bit tough to get through. So I want to thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Paul.
So
thank you
It's
too.
our honor.
All right, folks, we are going to go ahead and shut the show down from here. I want to thank you for watching. If you're a YouTube watcher, please subscribe to the channel. If you're a Facebook viewer, please like our page, and you'll get notifications of when we go live. Everybody, please join us next Friday. And until then, stay safe, and we'll see you later.